I will now go to the line clearing, which I think is one of the important aspects in this case, in this inquiry.
Yes.
We all know, according to the final Incotec report at paragraph 3.1, that the removal of the contents with respect to the quantity and method in line between berth 5 and 6 was the underlying factor that led to this accident. The removal created a gaseous void in the riser and sea line, setting up a latent differential pressure condition between the habitat and a gaseous void in the sea line when the mechanical seal and the inflatable plug were installed and the habitat was pressurized. End of quote. The line clearing process began on the 18th of January 2022 and was completed around the 3rd of February 2022. According to Jonathan Ramdan, Paria's operations team supervisors, LMCS undertook to conduct the line draining in accordance with Paria's work instruction, effective 5th January 2022. The Paria work instructions, I put the reference, this is a step-by-step instruction for the clearing of sea line between berths 5 and 6, developed by Paria's operation department. It was revised by Paria's Visham Harichan and approved by Paria's Jason Beckers and authorized by Paria's Colin Piper. Mr. Ramdan stated that the purpose of the document was to oversee the draining process and that the operations department of Paria had control over the process. But to crown it all, in Paria's daily work reports compiled by Paria personnel, which are referred to below, these documents record that Paria was aware that more than 1,252 barrels of oil was received in its tank farm and also in sub-barges. This, as we shall demonstrate, is more consistent with a line being drained than an intention to partially drain to achieve 30 feet ullage. The fact that the daily work report showed that Paria wanted the line to be drained and it participated in the draining process as it was monitoring the draining of the line. In order for the line draining process at Paria's compound to be done, Paria's resources and facilities, including its workers, were used in that process, and it is clear from the daily work reports that Paria kept a record of the draining of the oil.
I noted from that, when you were dealing with it in the evidence, that there were days when they were draining, and there was no record of how much was being drained. But it would appear for whole days, or at least substantial parts of days, there was draining taking place,
but no record,
without recording the amount that had been drained. So when you describe the 1,252 barrels that was actually recorded, it is on any view in excess of that.
1,252 plus.
Bearing in mind that on some of those days, as I say, they were draining for much of the day.
Yeah.
And we've made it clear, I think, during the course of the evidence that we've heard, that something in the order of 50, 60, 70 barrels or so ought to have done it. So we're not talking about some marginal difference here.
A major difference.
Yeah. Thank you.
Much obliged, Chairman. I will now go to the total content of the topside piping. The evidence showed that...
Do you want to... I was going to suggest that if you finish this part of it, and
yes,
then we might take a short break.
Yes, right? Thank you very much. The evidence showed that Mr. Kazim Ali Sr. believed that 300 barrels had to be removed from the topside piping to drain the topside piping. With respect to the underwater piping, Mr. Ali Sr.'s evidence was that 60 barrels had to be removed to achieve a 30-feet haulage in the riser at berth 6. Based on that evidence, therefore, no more than 360 barrels ought to have been removed during the entire line clearing exercise. That is 60 barrels from the underwater riser at berth 6 and 3 barrels from the topside piping. And if I can just follow just the next part.
Yes, I mean, that was using his rule of thumb,
Yeah.
1 barrel per foot, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. However, Paria produced contemporaneous daily work reports created by its maintenance technicians, which shows 960 barrels were removed during phase 1 and 336 barrels were removed during phase 2. And that is how I get the total of 1252. Those daily work reports, according to the evidence of Mr. Ramprasad Singh, were emailed to him on a daily basis.
Right.
They were copied to Mr. Manmohan Balkaran, Assistant Planning, and where required, operations.
So it's not as though they were living in sublime ignorance of it.
Paria, in the bosom of Paria, it knew. The imputed knowledge was that it knew the line was being drained in excess of what was intended. And LMCS knew that too.
Right. And just to take the figures you were dealing with earlier, that 916 barrels were removed under phase 1 and 336 under phase 2, even if in some odd way phase 1 did not have anything whatever to do with the subsea line and was to do with top line pipes or whatever it might have been, didn't involve that, it still left 336 barrels plus, I think, 1 day of blowing without recording the amount.
Yes.
So you had, on any view, even if you were to take that lesser figure for phase 2, it was still hundreds of barrels more on the face of it than it should have been.
Should have been.